What is up, bros? Josh here, and welcome to Chapter 4, Episode 2 of our Road to Tier 10 series. Our series, we're going down every line in World of Warships to see if we learn something or anything surprises us along the way. And today's episode is on the mid-tiers of the IGN cruisers. As you know, this is the line we're currently going down right now, and the mid-tiers of the IGN is very, what I would say, copy pasta. And that's what we get for the middle tiers is the Furataka at the tier 5, the Alba at tier 6, and the Miyoko at tier 7. So what you see is we've just clicked through all those. They all look very similar and they all play very similar, and this is when the IGN cruiser line, we've gotten away from those low tier ones and really into the 203 stealthy with torpedo cruiser gameplay, and it's very just from one to the next to the next. You get a little bit better as you go, and it's just very, very similar. So this was kind of it kind of all blends together a little bit when you're playing these. Obviously, each one of these are fairly strong. The one at tier 5, at least, let's just talk about the Furataka. This one just went through a recent buff with some of its armor, and a lot of people have been enjoying playing this. This, for me, though, was actually quite, what's the right way of saying it? I didn't really like this ship that much. And I highly recommend people that are going through the Furataka, especially coming from the Kuma, and this might be what I call it's called the Pensacola ascites, or the Pensacola syndrome, as I've always just called it. And that was back in the day where the Pensacola was at tier 7. It followed the Cleveland at tier 6, and then the New Orleans at tier 8. That was, of course, the old way it was set up. But the Pensacola was this kind of turd in between two roses, and especially following the Cleveland. And I kind of feel like the Furataka for me is kind of that. You leave the Kuma, which in my opinion is really good at tier 4, and then you go into the Alba, which is decent at tier 6. And to me, the Furataka really just didn't do it for me, and one of the main reasons was its lack of range. So one thing I do recommend when you're going through the Furataka at tier 5 is save some free XP and get this thing upgraded. Get this thing upgraded, get the new guns, get especially the range, of course. If you can just get some of those, you'll enjoy this process a lot more. Luckily, it doesn't take too long to get through this ship, but I highly recommend you saving some free XP for doing this, because stock, if everything's stock, it's going to be a bit of a grind. It's going to be actually kind of tough. But let's check out some stats we had for the Furataka. One of the downsides, too, for this ship is that the Furataka is tier 5. So tier 5, notorious for having a terrible matchmaking. And I think we even got bottom tier at a decent amount. But we held a decent win rate, 64%. It did take us 11 games to get through, and held a 56,000 damage average. So not too bad, decent XP as well. Comparing that to other stuff like the Bretagne. Bretagne took us a while to get through the French battleship, basically our slowest line, as well as the Podolsky. We got through that really fast at 9. So in the middle right there of also win rate games to get through. Again, if you can get some free XP and play a little bit through that and get through the stock, it wasn't too bad. It did take a while to get used to, though. But the main thing is being that brutal tier 5 matchmaking and just getting against stuff that you just outranges you, with really only having about a 14 kilometer, really a 13 kilometer effective range. You have that disadvantage. But one thing you can do is get into the stereotypical type of play that the IGN cruisers do, and that's getting onto a flank and letting ships push into you, because you can use your guns, your torps, and then your low stealth to engage, disengage, engage, disengage, and just be really kind of a monster no matter at what tier you are, because they know they have to push in against torps, and they know they have to push in against guns. So this is the first tier that the line gets the 203s, and those 203s can absolutely slam. So using both AP, the lower tiers, you're basically sticking exclusively tier 4 and under to HE. Now once you get to tier 5, you're using both ammos. It's not just a one type of ammo. Yes, I know that the IGN line tends to have a high fire chance, but you're using both ammos. So obviously HE if things are angled into you or going away. AP on those broadsides, get those fires going, but then get that full alpha damage and absolutely smash things. Smashing cruisers, even up tiered. That 203 does not care. Even if things are giving you kind of an angle, you can still hit them with the 203s. So this is a ship that takes a little while to get used to, but once you do and you're using both the AP and the HE, well, you can have some pretty dang successful games. Again, it only took us 11 games to get through, so this is something that you can definitely get through a bit quick. It wasn't for me. This is the first one. I mean, the Chikuma at tier 2 was kind of like a bleh ship. The Furataka for me, it's been getting lots of raves from people. People have been enjoying it. I didn't quite enjoy it. I don't like ships that have really poor range with this type of shell. And for me, I was ready to get it done with and move on to the Alba at tier 6. But overall, we got through it relatively quickly. We had pretty dang good stats in it. Holding the 64% at tier 5 matchmaking, we will gladly take that. And then we were on to the Alba. At tier 6 on the line, you reach the Alba, and pretty much as you'll see throughout this line, what you'll get is the next tier is just the same as the last, but just a little bit more. So imagine just a little bit beefier of a Furitaka with a little bit more gun action, with a little bit more range, and you have the Alba. I actually quite enjoyed this. One of the things is tier 6, yes, you do get bottom tiered. I'm going against tier 8s, which can be a brutal little experience, but tier 6 matchmaking is so much better than tier 5, and if you can get that, you'll kind of notice the same matchmaking. So imagine just playing the tier 5 and then getting to the tier 6 and then just kind of playing against the same ships you were just playing against the entire time. So you feel stronger, and this is where I started to feel, and now that I know this is going to sound crazy, this is where I actually started to feel like I was tanky when I felt this cruiser. Now, people do not think of IGN cruisers and think of tanky. I did. When I felt this, I would gladly hold down angles, keeping that ship kind of angled away, not giving up too much angle, not giving up too much of a broadside, keeping those front guns and back gun on it, and then just lighting ships on fire, kiting away, because that's what you wanted to do. The thing about these ships is their torpedoes tend to be in what's called the ass end, or ass torps. And what they want to do is their torp angles are pretty favorable. Now, basically, the only one that has kind of better torp angles is the Atago, which is the premium one. But they tend to have a rear-facing torp angle, which means they're better for getting that way. So what you want things to do is you want to have ships chasing you. So you get into that situation, you can kind of angle away, use that armor. The armor is actually kind of decent here for a cruiser. You do have some solid plating, the 25mm belt. You can bounce a lot of stuff, especially when you get into tier 6, you get into some awkward millimeter shells, even from battleships. So if you are angling away, you can definitely tank. And we had one of our best games in this ship. Yeah, but we had a 9-kill game in it. So stats for the Alba, though, really enjoyed the Alba. This was quite enjoyable throughout the entire thing, and this was something that I would say I was bummed to. This is one thing I love about this series, is that I get reminded. It's been so long since I've really played this ship, and you get reminded of how well certain ships can do. So 19 games to get through, not too bad. Almost 66,000 average damage. Look, really high destruction ratio, high survivability. 19 games though, 58% win rate on a solo queue, not too bad. Comparing that to like the Navy got through in the 6 in 16. Normandy got through in 19, so we're pretty average right here, right there with the battleship. So comparing it to the other tier 6s, it was doing all right. And this is one thing I was kind of interested in seeing how the cruisers would do. I would imagine destroyers would go kind of quick compared. And right now the Navy at tier 6 is really only a few games faster, so not as I guess not as slow as expected. I thought that because of the type of damage you're doing in this and the cruiser, you have. This is definitely one thing I've noticed too, is you have a lower impact on the game than you would a battleship or destroyer. Now, what I mean by that is your damage tends to be over time, and the dot damage of the fires. You're lighting the ships on fire, you're burning them down, but that takes time. You don't quite have the impact of pushing in with a Navy or pushing in with a destroyer, killing the enemy DD, getting caps, or even talking about battleships, getting in with the battleship, dev striking a cruiser, or obliterating a cruiser and your team finishes them off. With the cruiser, you definitely start to feel like you can only have such an impact, like so big compared to everything else. And this is where this line, because it is most cruisers outside of maybe a couple, I think the Royal Navy line is kind of this weird little anomaly of the line. But for stuff like this, you're just farming damage the entire time. So I wasn't sure how that would affect the long term of XP throughout these lines, and I really kind of noticed that you do feel like you kind of lack a big impact on the game. So what I always tried to do early was push in with the destroyer, find some destroyer that's kind of stealthy, and just hopefully help them, trade a little bit of my life if I have to, but try to get that early DD kill and be as good of a supporting ship as possible. Then one thing I tried to look for is situations where I could hold down flanks by myself or be very impactful, where we could hopefully have like 2 versus 4 on one side, or 3 versus 5, something like that, giving our other side the advantage. So I was always looking for situations to get again, that kind of kiting style of cruiser away, and just get that as effective as possible. Because if you have a bunch of ships pushing into you, players are scared of taking damage in this game. So if they know that a cruiser is holding them down and launching torps on cooldown, they're going to have a slow time pushing into that, because they just, one, won't know where the ship is because of low detection, and two, they're going to be just scared of taking damage. So Alba still overall had a lot more fun than I thought it would on this ship. It's been a long time since I've really played this ship. I think a lot of people look at the Alba as being one of the weaker tier 6 ships, and I found like it's pretty middle ground-ish, and still had a lot of fun using those 203 APs. So much fun, and absolutely just slamming other cruisers and stuff like that after giving you a broadside. That was the best. Finding the right things, burning down battleships, forcing repairs with torpedoes, and then just absolutely obliterating other cruisers. Yeah, I think we got a few dev strikes even with the Alba against other cruisers, so that's always fun. But overall, decent stats, decent damage, and not as slow as I thought it would. And that finished up the tier 6 Alba, and we moved on to the Miyoko. At tier 7, we have the Miyoko, and it's a ship that I think is very underrated for how good it is. A lot of people obviously talk about the ARP Miyokos that get all obliterated, and I think it's kind of just become a meme over time. But this ship, I think, is super underrated, and I think a lot of people don't give this ship as much credit as they should. The Miyoko is an absolute beast of a tier 7 cruiser. Yes, if you get caught broadside, you got those big flat sides that are just really kind of make you cry as you go back to port because you just got dev struck. But if used correctly, this thing is a pain in the ass for anybody to deal with. The meaning, you have a high fire chance with this thing. The AP is crazy. You're sending out 10 shells. You get away from those 6 shells per salvo up to 10. So you are basically almost doubling your potential damage output. And with the high fire chance, the high alpha damage on your HE, and then of course, if something's giving you broadside, you will dunk them for insane AP damage. Miyoko is fantastic. And on top of that, you get into the 2 sets of torpedoes on each side. So tons of tools to just take down an entire team, cause mayhem, and you get to reap the benefits for doing that. Miyoko was a lot of fun. I really enjoy this ship. To me, this is where the line really kind of gets some life, especially going into stuff like the Mogami, Ibuki. Yeah, we'll get there when we talk about it. I know the Ibuki has a lot of negative, kind of a negative reputation, but it's a lot better than a lot of people think. But the Miyoko is where this line kind of made up some time for me and did a lot better than I thought. 2,000 base XP, 61% win rate. Tier 7 is fantastic for its matchmaking. You get really good games. And even bottom tiered, I didn't really mind it in the Miyoko because you just spend time just farming big damage. So 73k, not too bad. Or we're only what? That's an increase of about almost 10k. So not too shabby there. 8k and some change. But 73,000 damage, that's solid for a tier 7 cruiser. And a lot of games, 17-11, not too bad. 28 games to get through, 61% win rate. So we'll take that. We got a Kraken as well, a few of them. But comparing it to stuff like the Minsk, this is where I thought I loved the Minsk when I was going through. And I thought this is where the line would just completely get blazed. But again, at tier 7, this is something that I'm just super surprised that it's not getting left in the dust. Yeah, we're a few games back compared to the Russian destroyers, and again, I thought Russian DDs would be one of the fastest actually because of how much success we had, but the Miyoko just 4 games slower than the DD, and I think that just happens to do with just how much damage you're actually farming and what kind of shell. So you're doing a lot of damage throughout the entirety of the games. So first of all, you're making a lot of credits, which is kind of nice to this. You can make a lot of credits, break even, that kind of stuff when you're going to this, because damage credits is all focused about damage. But you're helping with a lot of DDs too. So if you can get those DD kills and help your team out, you can really have a big impact like that. But again, still overall impact wise, it was a cruiser, so you are spending those games kind of farming down, but you just get those extra little kick in the ass of that extra damage that the Miyoko can do compared to the Alba, and you just feel like, man, you are a real threat that people are going to have to deal with. Now, people deal with you, it can go south pretty quick. Again, in 28 games, we had 44 ships destroyed, so I will take that destruction ratio as well. Decent survivability rate as well. Lots of main batteries though, lots of guns going out. That 10 shells per salvo is just something that's like really, you just feel it. You feel like you go from this kind of awkward cruiser that only has 6 shells going out and kind of a long reload to having the same kind of reload, but just so much more damage going out. So you feel this breath of, okay, here we go. Let's start farming some damage and let's get some things done, because that's exactly what this ship can do. I really enjoyed it. Again, it's the same kind of play style. So as you go from tier 5 to tier 6 to tier 7 and on, you are playing the same play style, but you can punish more, basically. And that's something really nice to see as this line kind of grows and matures as it goes up the tech tree. So as you're going to even the 8, the 9, and the 10, it just becomes more and more punishing, but you're still kind of playing the same way. So that's why I kind of always recommend this line. It's very easy to play because it's the same thing. It doesn't really change it up as you go, especially when lines like they split, like the USN cruisers. They have different play styles, so it can kind of get a little confusing on what you're supposed to do, even from tier to tier. It has different play styles. The IGN cruisers are almost identical, basically tier 5 and up, on how you're going to be playing it, where you're going to be going on maps. I mean, even if you played this with tier 7, because you get a lot of even the lower tier maps, you just go into the same spots you've been going to for 2 tiers already. So it's kind of nice. Again, it does make it all kind of blur together though, because you feel like you've been playing this. I think what are we at right now? About maybe 100 games, maybe not quite, 80 some games or so. Maybe even less than that, actually. 70 or 80 games, somewhere around there. They've all kind of blurred together, especially for this last part. But overall, I love the Miyoko. I think it's super underrated. You will absolutely smash with this thing, and then you come back, and then you're onto it. So 28 games, not too bad. A tad behind our fastest, which was the Minsk. But compare it to even like the Leon took 30 games. So this has been a big surprise to me that cruisers are being faster than the battleship line. Not quite as fast as I thought the cruisers would be the slowest for sure. But the Minsk is their fastest right now. We finished some other ones, but I'm gonna have to redo those just because of how this series has kind of changed over time. So the main lines we're gonna be looking and comparing to is the Russian DDs and the French battleships. We can't really look at the Pan-Asian DD or the York. But the cruisers being second fastest so far is surprising to me. I thought the Minsk for sure would blow everything out of the water. Then the Miyoko just kind of showed up and only took a few more games, and then just behind that is the Leon. So getting into tier 8, who will kind of take that over? Will the IGN cruisers finally make up some time and kind of take over the lead, or will the Russian DD stay the fastest line so far in our road to tier 10 series? But overall, this line has been a good time. I'm excited to sell these so I can actually purchase the next ones that we're going through. And again, whenever we do reach this, as you see, we are on the Ibuki already. So the 3rd episode, the high tiers, will come as soon as we unlock the Zao. And as soon as we unlock the Zao, we are on to the next line. It looks like we may be going a battleship line. People are thinking either Royal Navy or German. We're not quite sure what we're going to pick from there, but looks like probably a battleship line from here, and so we can kind of change it up and not do another cruiser line. Thought about maybe doing French or Royal Navy, and I want to wait on some torpedoes, or another destroyer line before the torpedo change. But anyways, the IGN line has been a lot more fun than I have played. I tend to not play these ships that much, so it's been awesome to kind of be a throwback and check out a lot of these. Again, that's the part I love about this series, is I haven't played the Furitaka, the Alba, even the Miyoko in over a year, if not more. So it's cool to kind of go around and play these and go, man, these are actually better than I remembered. So anyways, that's it. Episode 2. Or chapter 2, chapter 4, episode 2. Yeah, the IGN cruiser mid tiers, a lot stronger than I remember. Of course, the Miyoko just as strong as I remember, but I think a lot of people really underestimate that. And then the last episode, we will be doing the high tiers. So that includes the Mogami, the Ibuki, and then the Zao. So hope you guys have enjoyed this series. IGN cruisers a lot more fun and faster than what I thought. And let me know in the comments below what you guys think of the mid tier of the IGN cruisers. Do you find them fun to play? And have you enjoyed them yourselves? That's it for me, though. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.